Hello, everyone. So your organization is going electric. That's fantastic. But you're probably figuring out that picking the cars is the easy part. The real challenge is the charging. Today, we're going to build your EV charging policies step by step. This is all about getting the strategy, the cost, and the people part right. So let's dive in. Right, so you've made this huge, exciting decision to electrify your fleet. The vehicles are chosen, your sustainability goals are set, but now you're staring down what is honestly the trickiest part of the whole transition. How and where are your employees actually going to plug these things in? To figure that out, we're going to walk through a really clear journey together. First, we'll tackle your single biggest decision, then we'll explore the three main options: workplace, home, and public charging. And finally, we'll pull it all together so you have a policy that's built to last. Okay, let's get right into it. Section 1 is all about the most critical choice you are going to make. This one decision is going to shape your entire policy, and it's this. Where will your team primarily be charging their vehicles? You've basically got four paths you can go down. Are your drivers going to charge mostly at home overnight or at the office during the day? Are they going to be relying mainly on public networks, or are you going to build some kind of hybrid model that mixes and matches? The right answer here really depends on how your employees work and what your company is trying to achieve. And that decision really boils down to this fundamental trade-off. It's all about control. On one side, you can have high organizational control. This gives you awesome data, maximum visibility, but it also means you're taking on all the responsibility and the budget risk. On the other side, you could go for a shared control model. This cuts down on your admin work for sure, but you give up some of that control and you might end up with some gaps in your data. So before we go any further, I want you to really think about this for your own organization. What's your appetite for risk? How critical is getting perfect granular data for your reports? And what's that sweet spot for you between making things super easy for your people and having really tight oversight? Your answers here are going to guide everything else we talk about. Okay, with that big decision in mind, let's dig into our first deep dive, the workplace charging option. This is the path for organizations that really want that high level of control and are ready to manage the infrastructure themselves. Now, what's really interesting here is how the ownership models break down. If you choose to own the charges yourself, the org-owned model, you get total control, but you also get all the responsibility and some pretty high costs. The as-a-service model is the opposite. You outsource everything for a nice predictable monthly fee, but you lose some of that control. Then there's the hybrid. Maybe you own the hardware, but pay someone else to maintain it. That gives you a bit of a balance between the two. Now, if you do go this route, there are a few things that are totally non-negotiable. First, the good news. You don't have to deal with complicated driver reimbursements because you're paying the power bill directly. But, and this is a big but, you absolutely need a charge management system to track who's using what and stop random people from plugging in. You also have to plan for future growth from day one, and trust me, be really, really careful about offering guest access. It just opens up a whole can of worms with liability and payments. Okay, let's switch gears and look at the second major option, home charging. This is often the most convenient for employees, no doubt. But for the company, it becomes this constant balancing act between keeping things simple and having good governance. And just like at the workplace, you've got different ways to handle ownership. If your organization owns the charger, well, it's an asset you can get back, but think about the admin nightmare of trying to repossess it when an employee leaves. If the employee owns it, your admin is super simple. Maybe you just give them an allowance, but your control is almost zero. And that third-party option can handle the billing, but again, your direct control is pretty limited. This brings us to a really crucial point here, the verification trade-off. The more you verify, say, by requiring data from a smart charger for every single reimbursement, the lower your risk of someone charging their neighbor's car on your dime. But it's a ton of administrative work. The less you verify, like with a simple trust-based monthly payment, the easier it is for everyone, but you have to be okay with a little bit of cost variance. So this brings us back to that core question, but now we're looking at it through the lens of home charging. What's your company's culture really like? Do you lean towards trusting your people to do the right thing, or do you need tight processes and an audit trail for every single dollar spent? There is no one right answer here, but you have to pick one for your policy to actually work. And this quote just sums it up perfectly. You can build the most buttoned up, perfectly auditable system in the world, but if it's a pain to use, your employees just won't get on board with the whole EV program. Sometimes, accepting a tiny bit of inefficiency is totally worth it to get higher engagement and adoption. All right, let's move on to our third and final location, the public charging network. And the big question here is this going to be a core part of your strategy, or is it just a backup plan for when your drivers are out on the road? You've got a few ways to manage this. You can set up corporate accounts with the big networks, which gives you direct billing and nice, clean reporting. Fleet cards or roaming plans give you controlled access with a little more flexibility. And then there's the last resort, making people submit manual expense claims, which is just a huge administrative headache and gives you almost no control or data. So here's the bottom line with public charging. You're making a trade, you get incredible convenience for your drivers, which is great, but you give up a ton of administrative control. The prices can also be all over the place. So if public charging is going to be a big part of your policy, you just have to accept that reality and build it into your budget and your expectations. Okay, we've gone through all three locations. Now, in our final section, we're going to bring all these pieces together. This is about building a smart, coherent framework that's going to work not just today, but for the long haul. No matter which path you choose, home, work, or public, these things are absolutely essential. You've got to find a way to pull data from everywhere into one unified report. Your contracts have to be crystal clear about who's liable for what and what happens when an employee leaves. And please run a pilot program first to work out all the kinks. Above all, just make sure your reimbursement policies are fair and consistent for everybody. And remember, this is not a set it and forget it kind of deal. A good policy is a living thing. It's a cycle. You have to constantly train your staff, then you have to actually listen to their feedback, then revise the policy based on what you learned, and then plan your budget for the next year. This cycle is what's going to keep your policy relevant and effective. So let's end with this final thought. A well-designed charging policy built on the ideas we've walked through today is a huge strategic asset. It'll make your transition to electric faster and smoother. But a poorly designed one, it can quickly turn into a massive financial and administrative headache. The choice and the opportunity is all yours.